If your child's NAPLAN report just landed and you're looking at the words like developing or exceeding with no real idea of what they actually mean for your child, I want to walk you through it properly because most of what parents assume about the NAPLAN report is actually wrong. NAPLAN is a single snapshot taken on one day, measured against a national average. It sits every child in years 3, 5, 7, and 9 against the same standardized test. That's useful for spotting a pattern. It's not a measure of how smart your child actually is. And it's definitely not a verdict of the future. And I want to say that clearly before I go any further, because a lot of the anxiety that parents feel when opening this report card comes from treating it like a verdict when it was never designed to be one. Here's where most of the confusion usually starts. Your child's report has two numbers or two scores on it, a scale score and a band. And parents often read them as the same thing. The scale score is a precise number. It might be something like 512. That number lets you compare your child's result this year to their result 2 years ago, because the scale stays consistent across NAPLAN years. The band is a more simpler category, usually shown as a number or a word like developing, strong, or exceeding. Bands group a range of scale scores together. So two children with quite different scale scores might actually end up in the same band. And if you only look at the band, you might miss the real movement. A child whose scale score improved over the years might actually still show up in the same band. But on paper, it might look like nothing has changed. This is the most practical part of this video. Save this section. Don't just look at the overall band number. Look at the band descriptor underneath it or on the next page. That's the part that actually tells you what your child can and cannot do. Say the numeracy descriptor reads something like, the student can solve simple problems involving fractions with the same denominator. That single sentence tells us exactly where to look. If the band above it says, solves fractions involving different denominators, well, that's the specific skill separating the two. That's the gap. That's not vague. That's something concrete that you can actually ask about or practice. NAPLAN doesn't give you one score. It gives you 5. Reading, writing, spelling, grammar and punctuation, and numeracy. And they're worth looking at separately, rather than as an overall impression. A child can be strong in reading, but quietly behind in grammar and punctuation. And if you only remember the overall feeling of that report, that gap gets missed. Look at each of the 5 areas on their own and ask which one, if any, is noticeably lower than the rest. That's usually where the real information is. And if this isn't your child's first NAPLAN, there's a feature that most parents miss. It's genuinely the most useful part of the report. NAPLAN can show growth between NAPLAN years, comparing this year's scale score to 2 years ago. A child who is in a lower band but has grown significantly across scale scores is on a good trajectory, even if the band is the same. A child whose band has stayed the same but whose scale score had barely moved is a different story, and that's a pattern worth paying attention to. Growth over time tells you much more than a single snapshot ever will. The biggest mistake I see is parents either panicking over one low result and piling on extra worksheets, or dismissing it completely because everyone says NAPLAN doesn't matter anymore. Both of these miss the point. I'll give you an example of how this plays out. A family had come to us because their son's numeracy band hadn't moved between years 5 and 7, and the assumption was that he's just not a maths kid. When we actually read the descriptor language, we found that the gap was entirely in fractions. Everything else in numeracy was relatively okay. 3 sessions on fractions specifically, and by the next set of practice questions, that one area had caught up to the rest. That report never said fractions in bold letters. You had to read the descriptor to find it. I also want to be honest with you about what this report can't tell you. It doesn't measure verbal reasoning and conversation, it doesn't measure creativity, and it doesn't account for a child having an off day or feeling anxious about the exam. NAPLAN is one data point. It's a useful one, but it's not the full picture for your child, and it was never meant to be one. 3 things that I'd actually do this week. 1, read the band descriptor for each of the 5 areas, not just the overall number. 2, ask for the item level breakdown at your next parent-teacher interview. Or, if you have access to it, read it for yourself and have a look. Maybe you can figure out where the gap is for your child. And 3, If there's a pattern in one specific area, don't add more of the same kind of worksheets. Get a proper look at what's actually causing it first. In our experience, once you know exactly what's going on, the fix is almost always smaller and faster than most parents expect. It's about finding the gap, not doing more of everything. And if you want an actual answer instead of just guessing, comment clarity below and we'll send you our free parent clarity assessment. Or if you're ready to get started, the link to book a free discovery call is in the description. See you in the next one.